The story begins with four inseparable friends: Nick, Will, Corey, and Marcus. All four were professional athletes who decided to head out into the deep ocean for what was supposed to be the ultimate weekend fishing trip. The weather department had already issued severe warnings about a massive incoming hurricane. But blinded by excitement, the friends brushed it off, confident they would return long before the storm hit. By late afternoon, as the sky began to darken, they prepared to head back. But there was a major problem. Their highly expensive anchor got severely stuck in the rocky seabed, 50 meters below. Refusing to leave the costly equipment behind, Marcus, the captain, decided to use the sheer force of the boat's powerful engine to yank it free. He slammed the accelerator. The rope held, but the anchor didn't budge. Instead, the immense tension dragged the back of the boat deep into the water. Right at that catastrophic moment, a monstrous 40-foot wave rose from the black ocean like a wall of water. Before anyone could react, the boat was flipped upside down. Suddenly, the four friends found themselves stranded in the middle of a roaring ocean, clinging to the slippery hull of their capsized boat in freezing, pitch-black darkness. Their phones were trapped inside a waterproof bag in the cabin, completely cut off from the world. As the night progressed, a silent killer emerged: hypothermia. The water was so ice-cold that their body temperatures began to drop to dangerous levels, causing their minds to play terrifying tricks on them. Marcus was the first to lose his grip on reality. Severe hypothermia made him feel burning hot, and he began to hallucinate, screaming that his little daughter was standing in the water, calling out to him. He let go of the boat, reached out his arms into the darkness, and was instantly swallowed by a violent wave. Seeing this, Corey completely lost his mind. Overcome by pure terror and hallucinating sharks beneath his feet, he panicked, leaped into the wild waves, and vanished into the abyss. Now, only Nick and Will were left. To ensure the ocean couldn't separate them, they used a rope to tie themselves tightly to the boat. Hours later, the faint sound of a rescue plane echoed from above. Gathering every ounce of his remaining strength, Nick pulled out a phone and waved its flashlight frantically toward the sky. The pilot spotted the flash, but in the blinding storm, he mistook it for a mere reflection of lightning on the water and flew away. The last ray of hope was gone. Soon after, Will's body began to shut down. He whispered to Nick, "Tell my mom I fought hard," before a massive wave ripped him away from Nick's freezing hands. Nick was now entirely alone in the endless, silent expanse of the ocean. More than 40 hours had passed. Starving, dehydrated, and broken by the loss of his brothers, Nick finally gave up. He wondered what the point of surviving was when everyone else was gone. With numb fingers, he untied the rope holding him to the boat, lay flat on his back, closed his eyes, and waited for death. But right at that final second, a miracle occurred. Just as Nick surrendered to the ocean, a Coast Guard rescue boat spotted the white hull. Within moments, a rescue helicopter was hovering directly above his closed eyes. Nick was pulled from the water, barely conscious, when the rescuers asked him, "Where are the other three?" Nick could only weep and point toward the empty, ruthless ocean. 4 friends had entered the sea laughing, but only one returned. Nick survived, but a part of him remained in that ocean forever. He lives on today to tell the story of his 3 brothers, who fought bravely until their very last breath. The story begins with 5 close college friends, Leo, Sam, Maya, Chris, and Elena. They were seasoned trekkers who decided to conquer the Devil's Needle, a notoriously dangerous, snow-capped mountain peak known for its treacherous terrain. The local forest rangers had strictly warned them that a massive blizzard was moving in, but fueled by adrenaline and past successes, the group ignored the warnings, believing they could reach the summit and descend before the storm struck. By early afternoon, just as they reached the peak, the weather turned violently. The temperature plummeted, and a blinding whiteout curtain of snow trapped them on a narrow, icy ridge. Realizing their mistake, Leo, the group leader, decided to take a dangerous shortcut down a steep, unmarked slope to escape the freezing wind. It was a fatal decision. The vibration of their heavy boots triggered a massive avalanche. A roaring wall of snow swept down the mountainside. Before anyone could run, the snow buried their base camp gear and pushed them down into a deep, isolated crevasse, completely cutting them off from the main trail. Suddenly, the 5 friends found themselves trapped at the bottom of a freezing ice cave, surrounded by walls of solid glacier ice in pitch-black darkness. Their satellite phone and emergency flares were crushed under the avalanche snow. As the night progressed, the extreme cold brought on a terrifying enemy, severe hypothermia. The air was so freezing that their bodies began to shut down, causing their minds to hallucinate vividly. Chris was the first to succumb. The hypothermia tricked his brain into feeling intensely hot. Muttering that he was burning up, he began tearing off his heavy winter jacket and gloves. Despite his friends trying to hold him down, Chris broke free in a state of delirium, crawled out into the raging blizzard outside the cave, and froze to death within minutes. Witnessing this, Elena panicked. Overcome by claustrophobia and hallucinating that the ice walls were closing in to crush her, she lost her mind. She ran blindly into the darkness of the deeper, unstable caverns. A loud crack echoed through the cave as a massive ice sheet collapsed, burying her instantly. Now only Leo, Sam, and Maya were left. To keep each other warm, they huddled tightly together, sharing the last of their body heat. Hours later, the distant drone of a rescue helicopter echoed from the skies above. Gathering his remaining strength, Leo crawled to the cave opening and tried to signal with a small mirror, hoping the morning sun would reflect it. The rescue pilot saw a faint glint, but due to the heavy fog and turbulent winds, he assumed it was just light reflecting off a natural ice crystal and turned the chopper around. The last ray of hope vanished. Soon after, Sam's heart began to fail from the cold. He looked at Maya and Leo, whispering, "Don't let them forget us," before his eyes rolled back and he went completely still. Leo and Maya were now the only ones left, broken by the loss of their friends. After 50 hours of freezing darkness, Maya also lost consciousness, leaving Leo entirely alone. Starving, frostbitten, and exhausted, Leo finally gave up. He crawled away from the huddle, lay flat on the ice, closed his eyes, and waited for the cold to take him. But right at that final second, a miracle occurred. A ground rescue team, refusing to give up, spotted the bright orange strap of a backpack sticking out of the avalanche snow near the cave. They rushed inside just as Leo was breathing his final shallow breaths. Leo was pulled out of the ice cave, barely alive. When the medical team asked him about the rest of the group, Leo could only look back at the white, merciless mountain and weep. 5 friends had climbed the mountain smiling, but only one returned. Leo survived, but a part of his soul remained buried in that ice cave forever. He lives on today to tell the story of his 4 friends, who fought the frozen elements until their very last breath. The story begins with 4 ambitious cave divers, Ryan, Alex, Chloe, and Brandon. They were highly experienced professionals who decided to explore the Siren's Throat, a newly discovered and deeply dangerous underwater cave system hidden beneath a remote tropical island. Local divers warned them that the cave was prone to unpredictable, violent underwater currents. But driven by the thrill of exploration, the team brushed the warnings aside, confident that their advanced oxygen tanks and high-tech gear would keep them safe. By midday, they had descended hundreds of feet into the labyrinth of narrow, flooded stone tunnels. Just as they reached the deepest chamber, a sudden underwater shift triggered a massive cave-in behind them. Heavy boulders crashed down, instantly blocking the main exit route and severing their vital guide rope. It was a catastrophic situation. In the chaos, the violent turbulence stirred up thick clouds of silt and mud, reducing their visibility to absolute zero. Before anyone could navigate, the roaring current pushed them deep into an uncharted, airless underwater pocket, completely trapping them inside the flooded maze. Suddenly, the four friends found themselves stranded in a pitch-black, submerged tomb, surrounded by sharp stalactites and freezing water. Their backup navigation tools were smashed during the collapse, leaving them with no idea which way led to the surface. As the hours ticked away, a silent panic set in. Their oxygen gauges were dropping rapidly. The intense pressure and creeping cold began to affect their minds, causing a terrifying condition known as nitrogen narcosis, which made them hallucinate wildly underwater. Brandon was the first to lose his grip on reality. The narcosis tricked his brain into believing he was already back on the surface. Hallucinating that he was standing on a sunny beach, he ripped off his oxygen mask and regulator, smiling as he inhaled the freezing water. Despite Alex's desperate attempts to force the regulator back into his mouth, Brandon choked and drifted away into the dark abyss. Witnessing this, Chloe panicked. Overcome by extreme claustrophobia and hallucinating that a sea monster was emerging from the shadows to drag her down, she lost her mind. She swam frantically away from the group, ignoring the warning flashes of her friends' dive lights. She jammed herself into a narrow, unstable rock crevice, causing a secondary collapse that buried her instantly under heavy stones. Now only Ryan and Alex were left, sharing a single backup oxygen tank as their primary tanks ran completely dry. Hours later, they felt a faint vibration traveling through the water, the distant thud of a rescue team's underwater sonar. Gathering his remaining strength, Ryan banged his heavy dive knife against a stone wall, hoping the sound would carry. The rescue divers heard a faint metallic tapping, but due to the thick limestone walls distorting the sound, they concluded it was just natural underwater seismic activity and shifted their search to a different sector. The last ray of hope vanished. Soon after, the backup tank ran out of air. Alex looked at Ryan, tapped his own chest as a final goodbye, and closed his eyes as his body went completely limp. Ryan was now entirely alone in the suffocating darkness, broken by the tragic loss of his team. After 35 hours trapped underwater, his lungs burning and his mind fading, Ryan finally gave up. He let go of the stone ledge he was holding, closed his eyes, and allowed his body to sink toward the cave floor, waiting for the end. But right at that final second, a miracle occurred. A deep-sea rescue diver, refusing to abandon the search, spotted the glowing emergency strobe light of Ryan's dive computer reflecting off a distant rock. He swam down furiously and pulled Ryan out of the abyss just as he lost consciousness. Ryan was brought to the surface and rushed into a hyperbaric chamber, barely alive. When the authorities asked him about the rest of his crew, Ryan could only stare blankly at the dark ocean waves and weep. 4 friends had dived into the water, smiling, but only one returned. Ryan survived, but a part of his spirit remained trapped in that underwater tomb forever. He lives on today to tell the story of his 3 friends who fought the crushing darkness until their very last breath.